Hello, friends, and welcome to Journal the Body podcast. My name is Abby Fernandini. I am your host, and today is episode 2 of the podcast, and it's going to be all about pregnancy. So we'll call it the pregnancy podcast. This week, I announced that I am, in fact, pregnant, and I'm super excited. We're like over the moon. I'm over 13 weeks, coming close to 14 weeks now. So I'm out of the first trimester. Yay, which is like usually the biggest window for risk. So I am just super thankful to have gotten this far and like so excited because this is a whole new experience for me, which means I get to do a lot of research. I get to kind of dive into a new topic that I've been pretty interested about in the past few months to a year. So I'm gonna give you guys the scoop on, how it happened, any pregnancy symptoms that I had, current routine, supplements I'm taking, things like very nuanced things with the pregnancy and the birthing sphere that I've learned so far. So, if you're, thinking about becoming pregnant or you're currently pregnant or you're just interested in the topic, I really hope that you find some value in this episode. So without further ado, the very first question I think I got was it planned? And the answer is, I'm going to be super transparent. The answer was yes and no. So to start, I have not been cycle tracking for months now. I know when I ovulate, I know those windows of time. And I would say like intuitively, just in my body, I'm pretty like aligned. And Rodrigo and I tried one time. I knew I was ovulating, but I also knew that there was issues in my family in the past in terms of like pregnancy and there's been like some infertility that's run in my family, and also like my mom had a tough time getting pregnant, so it took her 2 years. So I kind of had in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, like even if we try, it's going to probably take us a long time. I have been doing everything that I can to become as healthy as possible to, support something like a pregnancy, but I'm not going to like waste my breath and expect it to happen like right away. Right. So Rodrigo and I tried once. And this was before the restaurant opened. And then him and I had to sit down and we were like, like let's just wait until the restaurant's open, until we're in like a less busy time. That way we can like, kind of enjoy it or be in a different place or whatever. So we have this like whole like heart to heart, whatever. And then boom, I didn't get my period when I expected to. And it was so funny because like I'm pretty sure Rodrigo knew before I did that I was pregnant, because like he was having, there's something called male pregnancy symptoms. It's a weird thing and I could like get into it, but you can look up like what that means. But I think he knew I was pregnant before I did. And I wasn't even like that late for my period, but he marched me to CVS. He's like, "You're taking a pregnancy test because I know that you're pregnant." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're being like, dramatic. There's no way. Like we tried once. Like it that would be crazy. Like statistically speaking, it would be like really impressive if that was the case, right?" So I walk into CVS, I grab tampons and pads because I was like, oh, my period's going to be here any day now. I've been under a lot of stress. Like, there's no way that like, I basically, in my brain was like, there's no way I'm pregnant. So Rodrigo literally looks me in the eye. He says, put those down. You don't need those. I know you're pregnant. Grab the pregnancy tests and let's go. So I will march back with him to our apartment in New York, and I'm just like sitting there and I'm taking the test, and Rodrigo's like, no, 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 I think you're doing it wrong. I think you're doing it wrong. So I was like, this is like one of those tests that you really can't mess up, right? Like there's no such thing as false positives, I'm pretty sure. There's no such thing as like, I feel like it's a very straightforward thing. And if you mess up a pregnancy test, like it's impressive. So anyway, all that to say, I'm looking at the test. It's got a clear line down the middle, which later I realized is the control line. And I'm like, I don't know, that back line, the back like horizontal line is super, faded, like that might not be a positive pregnancy test. So I'm like sending a picture to my friend Courtney, who I work with, and I'm like, is this a pregnancy test? Like, is this positive? Like, I don't know. And she's like, girl, that's as positive of a pregnancy test as you're gonna get. So I'm like, oh my God, okay, really? So then I take the second pregnancy test, same thing. It's like clear as day, line down the middle. Like there is no denying that at this point I am like pregnant. And Rodrigo is still sitting there in disbelief. He's like, no way. Like, there's just no way. He's like, I physically cannot wrap my brain around it. And I like the first night, I think I was literally in shock because I was just like, how could this be just once? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane. So I was like right at the beginning, it was like at the beginning of August. So yeah, so I'm well over 3 months in. And but like it was amazing because Rodrigo was ecstatic. Like we've had so many conversations about, he wants to be a dad so bad. And I'm obviously younger than him. So I'm 25 and Rodrigo's 31. And so he's just like, he's been dying to be a dad. And I was always kind of like, yeah, like we're going to do it soon. We're going to do it soon. We're just kind of in like a really crazy period right now of like living between New York and living in, between there and Florida. And so I kind of always like was like soon, like I want this, but like I'm really fearful of the time. So, with all that said, I cannot help but believe this is, in fact, divine timing because of the fact that we only tried once and it was like, boom. And like I said, that was not expected from my side of the family. Like, my family has had some pretty serious issues in terms of like the fertility stuff. And so it was just always something in the back of my mind. And not only that, but I had gotten seen by my favorite doctor, Dr. Motley. And he was like doing a kind of a reading, some muscle testing, some work on me, basically. And, he had said, hey, like, have you ever presented symptoms of like cysts, not necessarily PCOS, but like ovarian cysts or, fibroid like things? And I was like, ironically enough, yes, I have. I have breast like fibroids that I was using progesterone to kind of support because I was working with two of the girls one of them is Dr. Keneally's daughter, actually. She and I had been doing a lot of talking and I had told her about my like fibroid, that come and go as I get stressed. Like sometimes they'll be appear and they run in my family, they're genetic speaking. So she was like, hey, just try a little progesterone for like a couple of weeks and see if it helps. And lo and behold, it helped. I also was the time that I ended up getting pregnant. So I think that just that little bit of like progesterone cream, that natural progesterone cream that I have been using, also what may have been the reason that I actually ended up holding, onto the baby and was able to actually like conceive. So I could get into the whole thing of progesterone and I'll touch a little bit more on that when I talk about like some of the supplements I'm taking. But all in all, so far, I am so blessed because right now I'm in a city and we just opened up Artesano and everything has been so crazy. Just my life feels like it like kind of flipped upside down. And like same with Rodrigo, where nothing is our normal routine anymore. Everything has been like dramatically changed from where we were living to, Rodrigo's schedule even. Like I have a very, very good, like flexible schedule in terms of the fact that I work remote, but he's now like in the restaurant 12 to 15 hours a day. And thank goodness that is going to subside here in the next month or so. And he'll be able to like really actually partake and be like really involved and just kind of get to relax a little bit more with me. But it's just been such a whirlwind. And I cannot imagine if that was the case and I was having pregnancy symptoms. So I am very, very happy to say I have actually had no pregnancy symptoms, hardly at all. Not really any nausea, not really any crazy food aversions, like nothing that makes me just like want to rile. I will say there's things that don't sound as appetizing, like not necessarily like I'm gonna be sick from this, but like for example, like when I tried to eat chicken, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. It's not really something I'm craving. So there were some foods that I was like not as crazy about. It wasn't like I couldn't eat them, but all in all, the symptoms were like super minimal. And to be fair, if I hadn't taken the pregnancy test, I probably wouldn't have known. I might not have known that I was pregnant because it's been like fairly smooth sailing. Which is also like a lot to say because New York comes with its various smells, especially like when the weather was still warm. There was like, it's just a lot of garbage and exhaust and like things that like for the most part I really do try to avoid. But if I had been having really bad symptoms, I could have seen how that would have really, really taken a toll on me. So all in all, and also like the nausea, I have a friend, one of my friends who's pregnant or like had a long pregnancy. She had hyperemesis gravidarum. I think that's how you say it. Don't quote me. But it's like basically when you're sick your entire pregnancy. Um, and that is not fun. Like I cannot even imagine being sick the first trimester, let alone all three trimesters. That's just like it's terrible. I would wish it upon nobody. Because not only is like your body foreign and like everything that's going on is foreign, and then like on top of that, you add the fact that you're just like super sick. Like, no, thank you. And to anybody who has dealt with like, pretty severe symptoms in the first trimester, again, my heart goes out because like I cannot imagine how intense that first trimester is going to be. Is like you find out your whole life is changing and you're like having these like just terrible symptoms. But I will say I was doing some research on where does, for example, morning sickness and nausea, where does that come from? And I kind of found some interesting research. Well, I'll go on a couple of different tangents. So like there's a few different factors that I can see playing into, who gets like super sick versus maybe who doesn't, etc. And this is what I have found. Now, there is a good correlation. There's a pretty, I would say, high correlation between women being magnesium deficient, it sounds like, and also experiencing pretty gnarly nausea symptoms. So magnesium is one thing that raised a flag for me that it seems like some women who get these pretty severe symptoms, the magnesium is a big problem. And again, that's a super vital mineral. So, I have been supplementing magnesium like a mad woman during this pregnancy. And I honestly am so thankful for it because I use magnesium oxide to stay regular because constipation is real. And I will talk about that later. Magnesium oxide has like helped me like just kind of like stay regular. And then, and then I do topical magnesium, like a magnesium spray on my stomach, on my chest, like wherever feels good. And that seems to also really help me for sleep and just a few other things. And the magnesium has been a big, big part of my pregnancy so far, which probably comes not necessarily as a surprise to a lot of people. And the other thing that I will say is that I was also doing research on because I was wondering myself if I had some like histamine issues, something called mast cell activation syndrome, which like you can kind of be reactive to quote unquote high histamine foods, which are things that I naturally end up avoiding anyway. But it seems like high histamines really tie in with pregnancy because what happens is you technically speaking, your histamines go crazy during, especially the first trimester, I believe, from what I understand. Your histamines just go crazy during pregnancy in terms of like your levels. And I think I read it's crazy. It's like 500% or I can't remember if it's 500% or 500 times the amount of normal enzymatic reactions that basically are going on. But histamines are like a huge, huge part of pregnancy. And I'm not an expert in it. I'm not going to claim to be, but high histamine foods are going to make whoever is having like some of these symptoms even sicker. So wine, obviously, that's something that they tell us to avoid, or I mean, alcohol in general is pretty high histamine. So is wine. That's what they tell us to avoid during pregnancy. Aged cheeses cured meat, some of those raw meats, a lot of things that actually like some of the things that are listed as like, hey, probably best not to consume these during pregnancy also happen to be super high histamine. So I wonder if there's a tie between that and nausea because histamines, like if you're having a serious like histamine response, it can make you feel like you're like sick dying because it's terrible. It's just you, I mean, you get the nausea, you get the gnarly headaches, you just feel really, really rough. So histamines are a big thing. And I might try to link some research I found from this doctor about histamines in the show notes. And then the other thing that I think is really like contributing to probably a lot of women's sickness is blood sugar. That seems to be like one of the biggest things for me because even in general, like I don't feel great if I'm not managing my blood sugar, but I would, especially during the first trimester, I was eating protein like every couple of hours, like even if it was a beef jerky stick, if it was just like chickpeas, like even though it's not like a real, like not like a true protein, but it was just like, just dense. And again, good blood sugar balancing foods. I was eating like every couple of hours, and I feel like that really helped offset any, morning sickness, quote unquote, or just nausea in general that I would have had. So blood sugar is a huge deal. And this is the really hard part about that, right? Is okay, women, maybe you're not the best and you don't know how to balance blood sugar to begin with. Like again, rule of thumb is if you're gonna eat carbs, let's also eat some fats and proteins. Like that's just rule number one through and through for blood sugar. But if you're so nauseous when you first wake up in the morning, it's really hard to eat, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? What I found that I was just doing, and again, like I said, I got very blessed and very lucky that I didn't have food aversion. So this is very different for everybody. But first thing when I woke up in the morning is I ate 100% grass-fed beef jerky stick. And I don't know why, but I just felt really good after that. And I was like, okay, I've got some protein in me. I couldn't do coffee actually the first few weeks. So I will say that like the first like 2 months, it's just like now that I'm ending like the third or kind of into past the third month, I'm now able to start coffee again, but coffee and I actually were not friends for a little bit. So I started out with like protein, like first thing in the morning. It seemed to really, really help me. It also helped, I think, my mood, of course, because if you're managing your blood sugar, you're managing your mood, you're managing your hormones. So that was huge for me. It was just like, first thing, like I'm going to eat a beef jerky stick, whether I feel like it or not. I'm just going to do it. And it's going to become part of my morning routine. And then I would usually make something like, avocado toast or like a rice scramble or something like that later, like, later in the morning. And I found myself eating like way more frequently. And I think that also helped the changes that were happening in my body along with balancing blood sugar. That just really helped, I think, in general for me. Yeah, that's it. Like that might be one of the keys. So again, histamines, like finding out if you have histamine response, blood sugar, and magnesium seem to be like three things that really stood out to me for a lot of women who may be having pretty gnarly morning sickness or nausea symptoms. So that's that. Let's talk about current routine. We can talk about that. So I am in like a weird place right now where my routine is like radically shifted because of the restaurant and everything. So I'm going to bed later at night, and I am sitting in front of like a red light every night, which feels really good. But I am going to bed every night later than I'm used to. So that means I'm getting up later in the day, like 8 now, like sometimes 8:30. In between, I'd say 7 and 9 is like now like when I'm getting up, which is very radically different from my life before the restaurant in New York and also in Florida, which is I was going to bed at like 8:39, 9:30, depending. And I was waking up at like 6 a.m., like so rested, feeling great. And so, yeah, it's been a little bit of an adjustment, I'm not going to lie. And it's tough too, just because, we're in small living quarters, but it's all working out, and I have a little routine that I have set to do, the best that I can do with my given circumstances. And yeah, so I sit every single night for about a half hour to an hour in front of my red light, not like super close, just like it kind of, I have it on so that my whole atmosphere just allows me to kind of fall into this like mode of, oh, I want to sleep soon. So that's what I do at night. Again, do the best I can to sleep, mouth tape on my mouth, eye mask on, playing the sounds of crickets so that I can avoid the annoying noises of New York City that just, permeate through the walls at night. But in the morning, like I said, like for me, it's like crucial to like get like protein first thing. I'm like, eating rice and avocado and maybe bacon and just getting like, this morning I had like pomegranates and coconut yogurt and like a bacon toast with this like arugula and this nice like spread. So like things that like I'm just right now it's just all about being well-rounded. I'm not eating a particular way. I'm just like, okay, I want to be as well-rounded as possible. I have cut dairy out, which is really sad. I ate some raw dairy this weekend and I just like noticed this crazy breakout that just happened like right after I ate it on my face. And that was when I knew it was undeniable that I have a little bit of a response to dairy, which was heartbreaking too because I eat dairy every day. So we've cut out dairy for now. I am in terms of like activity wise, I would say I work out 3 to 4 times a week. Like right after this, I'll go and get a sweat on. Probably this warm yoga. So technically, you're not allowed to do hot yoga, is what they claim. Everybody's different. I would go to your practitioner if you have questions. I'm just going to preface this because of what I'm about to say. Everybody's super different. Everybody's thermoregulation is very different, and everybody's climates are super different. So, myself coming from Florida's climate, where the average day was 100 plus degrees in Florida, and I was outside a fair amount, my thermoregulation is very good in terms of I can stay relatively cool. I don't overheat. I don't have any of those issues, and I'm very used to hot climates. The same goes for yoga. My hot yoga practice was very consistent. I'm very conditioned to hot yoga. I've never had an issue with hot yoga. It's something that's like been very in my routine and conditioned. So therefore, my practitioner was like, hey, you can do certain yoga classes that are heated. Again, beware of the temperature. You do not want to get over a certain temperature. I think it's like, I want to say like your body temperature should never like pass. I don't want to say it because I think it was like 100 or 102 or something like that. Like, of course, like that's like fever burning, right? So that can be dangerous. Don't quote me on the temperature, but yeah. So my practitioner was like, hey, you're super conditioned. You're also used to living in a hotter climate. You're probably going to be able to do certain heated classes that are more slow flow, that are not too intense to where you're like just like absolutely drenched and like dying coming out. Like be really mindful of the classes that you're choosing, but you should be fine in a low impact, mildly heated setting. So I've been doing a lot of that and I feel great. I get my electrolytes and I put them in my water when I go to classes. So, I'm staying super hydrated. I'm not feeling bad at all. My other exercises of choice are lifting. I have no problem lifting during pregnancy. And again, everybody has to work with their, own practitioners on this. And I'm not giving advice by any means, but again, being conditioned, having that conditioning prior to, and knowing kind of like my body and my body's limits. And if something feels right versus wrong, I felt super comfortable going and picking up, pretty heavy or heavier weights. And just continuing to train, because what they don't tell you when you get pregnant is as your stomach starts to completely like just rejumble and reconfigure, the first muscles that tend to deteriorate or go are actually the glute muscles. So as your pelvis is readjusting, as like a lot of your internal organs are kind of like making room for the placenta and the baby, etc., your posterior chain gets super weak. So I've been recently, like I went on Sunday with Rodrigo, we went and like squatted and did some deadlifts, and my hamstrings after were killing me. My butt is like sore too, but I mean, I'm talking it's an effort right now for me to keep my glutes and my hamstrings and like my posterior chain like strong, because I feel like there's a lot of compromises that are trying to come about while my body changes. And so that's like a super important thing to train, is just continue to train that posterior chain. So, squatting, deadlifting, also doing like a lot of bridges in yoga or weighted bridges, even that's really helped. Again, the pelvic floor, the pelvis, it's all good things, all the good things. So those are my two main modalities right now. I've also loved prenatal Pilates. That's been so great. Like I'll just look up courses like classes on YouTube that are like 30 minutes long that again train the pelvic floor, that train those abdominals to move in the right way, the right direction, the right diaphragmatic breathing. So that's been really helpful. And those are my main modalities. I haven't done a ton of running, and that's just because naturally I'm kind of averted to a lot of high intensity stuff now, because minus like obviously yoga and like lifting can be pretty intense, but like high intensity interval training is not something that I go for really as much anymore, unless it's pretty short circuit. And running isn't really something that I opt for as much anymore as well. And honestly, like prior to me getting pregnant, and even now, like being pregnant, like my body's in like, I feel like the best kind of shape that I would want my body to be in, to where it's like very metabolically flexible. I feel really good about the workouts I'm doing. I'm not getting back overly fatigued like I was from CrossFit or high intensity interval or running super long distances, etc. So I think it's just been a really good shift for me. And I'm just continuing what I was doing now during my pregnancy. And it's helping me quite a bit in terms of just maintaining the rest of my body's kind of physique and structure. The other thing I will say is that walking is my new go-to. Of course, I need to walk everywhere anyway, because Selva makes me walk at least, 2 to 3 times a day, pretty good distances. So I definitely get my steps in. But like walking is just like, okay, I got my heart rate going a little bit. I live kind of in a hillier area. I've got Selva. I'm, making sure that I'm walking with a good gait. So I'm making sure that my posterior chain is, activating, and that I'm not like kind of leaning into that belly, where the belly kind of comes forward and the pelvis tips, which I found like I've started to kind of feel. So that is the workout side of things. And finally, supplements. Supplements are one of the most important things that I could be focusing on right now. I'm going to go on the record and say I am not taking a prenatal vitamin. You can forget it. 90% of the prenatal vitamins on the market seem like they just don't really serve what I would want in my pregnancy based on my research. So I do not take a prenatal supplement. Now, I can tell you what I am doing for the B vitamins, because I'm sure during pregnancy, you probably have heard, oh, B vitamins, B vitamins, B vitamins. And also, like, if you're trying to conceive, it's like, oh, you hear like B vitamins. And anyway, so bee pollen is like definitely a top priority. Same with beef liver. I'm taking like, depending on if I can get actual beef liver or not. Like I had duck liver pate with my friend Shelby the other night. Rodrigo occasionally cooks like liver steaks and stuff. So it just depends. But if I don't get that during the week, I'm taking this grass-fed beef liver. That's a pretty like strong potency. And I'm taking like a good amount of capsules. I think like 6 capsules a day. So definitely feeling really good about that routine right now for the B vitamins between the bee pollen and the beef liver. I'm also doing topical magnesium spray, like I mentioned. I'm doing trace mineral drops by Trace Minerals. Those have been really, I feel like that's been really helpful for me. It's super important that you get a ton of minerals during your pregnancy because, and I learned this because I was talking to a friend, she's also pregnant. Like we were talking about like your gut health, but also your oral health. And oral health wise, your teeth start to leach minerals out to support and supply the baby's needs. So as your hormones change and a lot of different things change, your gums actually bleed a lot more. And it can kind of pose problems for, dental deterioration. My one friend had a baby, or she had her like first two kids or whatever. After one of her kids, she like went in for an appointment. She had five cavities, and she has like never had any issues with her teeth at all. But she went in, she had five cavities after like her pregnancy. So it's a real concern in terms of like oral health and pregnancy. So, with that being said, that's why I'm doing a ton of trace minerals and making sure that like I'm doing a lot of magnesium. I'm eating like super nutrient dense foods because the last thing I want to do is like for my gums and my teeth to decay because I'm not getting enough of that for the baby. So trace mineral drops, like I said, is great. And I'll link all this in the show notes too, so you guys can see if anybody is interested. Topical vitamin E oil, love it. I get it by Pure d'Or. It's a company. I don't know. I really like them. They're USDA organic and it's vitamin E oil. So topical vitamin E, I'll take it. It makes your skin feel great. Also been rubbing like good amount of beef tallow and stuff on. So beef tallow for the skin also. And also doing a lot of dry brushing because the inflammation and like in terms of just how much water weight you can kind of hold, dry brushing has really helped me with maintaining that aspect of things. So that's been nice. And also, another thing I take a lot of is cod liver oil. Now, I'm going to preface this. You should be going to talk to your practitioner about all these things because I'm not a doctor and I cannot prescribe or recommend any of this stuff. And that's exactly what I am not doing. I'm not going to quote unquote say these are my prescriptions or my recommendations or anything. But I do take cod liver oil. Now, this is like super controversial in space of like Western medicine versus Eastern medicine and stuff. So up until I don't even know, like sometime in the 1900s, cod liver oil was something that every generation downed. Like during pregnancy, children were given it for immunity. It is like liquid gold in terms of all of the components, all of its components, and especially its ratio of vitamin A to vitamin D. And again, there's been a lot of like scares of like, oh, vitamin A, like synthetic vitamin A during pregnancy, blah, scary. Vitamin E during pregnancy, scary, right? Again, not recommending, just saying, hey, I read some research. I read the book. I have Nourishing Traditions by Sally and also Dr. Thomas Cowan also wrote that. So I have the book Nourishing Traditions, the mama and baby book. Again, they break down why there was such a like, controversy around cod liver oil. The controversy doesn't really hold up its argument. Synthetic vitamin A is the cause for concern, not things like cod liver oil. Cod liver oil is like great ratios of vitamin A to vitamin D. It's naturally like occurring in nature. Like they've used it for centuries. Like this is something that they give in Europe to, everyone, children, pregnant women, grandparents. Like it is like the most amazing thing for immunity, especially in colder climates. So I'm in New York right now. It is an amazing like supplement, especially in the colder climates, for the vitamin D, for the A. So that is something I am doing. I am not going to give like how much I'm taking because I feel like that's relevant, but cod liver oil is something that I will hang my hat on, and I will say I believe that it's not a bad thing. So that is that. The last thing I will address is progesterone cream. So I mentioned this earlier, but I was using progesterone cream in the beginning weeks before I even knew I was pregnant, like I said, for like fibroids. And I felt such a difference. And again, you're not supposed to use this long term. It is not always the first solution. Sometimes it's just like something, if you haven't changed your diet, you should always change your diet first. But if you just need a little help for like a small amount of time to see if it changes anything for you, it can be really beneficial short term. So that is what I was doing. I was only on it for a couple weeks, doing like literally less than a pea-sized cream over my chest. And like I said, pretty sure that's the reason I got pregnant, probably. or at least was able to hold the pregnancy so quickly. And two, a friend of mine also started using it 2 weeks later and then got pregnant. So I wonder if those are just coincidences or if those are like, if that's just, again, those are my anecdotes, but I was really impressed and I was like, oh my gosh, this makes sense why, progesterone. So as I've gone through pregnancy now that I've started progesterone, I don't want to stop because a lot of times practitioners, and especially like fertility practitioners, depending on like what they practice, if they're funk med or whatever, they will recommend progesterone cream because it helps prevent miscarriages, especially through the first 20 weeks. So for these next, however many weeks I have left until I hit 20 weeks, I will be avidly using my progesterone cream all through this period of time. Again, I'm on a very low, super, super small dose, like nothing crazy at all. But it has been something that I feel like has just really helped balance me. It's really crucial, or really progesterone in general, not even like this, not like a cream, but just progesterone levels in general. It's like that is how you prevent miscarriages. So, all in all, I will say that that has been a really big factor for me. And everybody's different, and everybody's hormone levels are different. So it's good to, make sure that you know your body, you know your panels. Maybe you're working with a practitioner to run labs to see how you're doing and how you're progressing, and if your hormone levels are normal, et cetera. Because something works for somebody, it doesn't always work for somebody else. So that is what I've been doing so far. And all in all, I will say it's been quite a rabbit trail that I've gone down because there's a lot of things that I'm learning. I'm planning on doing a home birth, I believe down in Florida. As of right now, that is my plan, to be back down in Florida, to do a home birth in May or end of April, just depending, because sometimes we have early babies from my family. So I will be down there planning on doing a home birth. And I've learned so much about like the doula space, the midwives. I think I'm hiring a midwife for sure, to come to the house to do, yeah, an all natural birth, probably in a tub. Definitely going to be the granola gal doing that. I do not trust the hospital settings. I don't trust that you're like, I feel like, you're not necessarily listened to as well, or at least I feel like that's even been my experience with my OBs, like up until this point. I feel like there's this wall of, I'm the doctor, you're the patient, and that's all you kind of get. So I want to take matters into my own hands, and I want to make sure that I get to make all of the decisions on my own. For example, delayed cord clamping. Like, I'm not going to have somebody clamp my child's cord as soon as it's born. I'm going to do, 30 minutes later to an hour later, like whatever. I'm going to wait for that because there's so much that is tied to the immune system with that, et cetera. And same thing with, like, for example, a vitamin K shot. My kid doesn't need a vitamin K shot right out of the womb. So again, those are my personal preferences. These are things that I've been reading about. These are things that I'm so intrigued with, and I'm going to try to do the full scope of research and try to figure out like how to navigate this, with lots of help from people who are super experienced and they know a lot more than I do. And I'm super grateful for that. But, we're, stay diligent. My motto is always read widely, read wisely. Because, you can't read everything and believe every single thing you read. But you can certainly like go against what most of the mainstream conventional methods are and probably find just as much success, if not more. So that is my pregnancy podcast. I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to do a post on some of the supplements I'm taking, and also link the show in my bio. So also I'm going to do show notes. I'll link some of the supplements and stuff that I'm currently using. Thanks for listening, friends. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.